In this case, we're going to do a simple biogeneric crown on tooth number 8. And in this video, I'm going to show you two different ways to design this, one with the CEREC chairside software and one with the CEREC inLAB software. I'm just going to go through a couple things why I prefer a lot of times to use the inLAB software the way it stands right now. So what we're going to do is we obviously image this with our OmniCam in version 4.0.5. And after you get the margination, you guys all know that the next step is define insertion axis. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on that. And in define the insertion axis step, you're all fairly familiar with this step. What we're going to do is we basically just want to align this distal to distal. Okay, so basically we're going to get that prep lined up across the screen here, so the distal and the mesial lined up, buccal and lingual. Try to minimize the amount of yellow. A lot of times with the OmniCam you will see a little bit more of this than you will with the blue cam. But you guys get the point. You all know how to do this. And my point to be made on this is it's a little bit arbitrary, meaning that if I line it up just like this, that probably will work fine. But if I line it up like this, that probably will work fine too, or like this, etc. So the insertion axis step is a little bit arbitrary, but it does work. It's very intuitive. You guys have been using it for a long time. So let's go ahead and hit OK, and we'll move forward and we'll get our biogeneric proposal. Okay, and here's our biogeneric proposal. Not terrible by any means. It doesn't have much anatomy. It's a little flat. We need to do some work here. You can see the contacts are definitely impinging on the adjacent teeth, so there is a bit of work to be done. Definitely not terrible, definitely workable here. So what we're going to do is do this one a little different way. Is we're going to go ahead and we're going to export this into the inLAB software. And the way that you export a case from chairside 4.0.5 if you are using the OmniCam is you're going to go up to the top, we're going to hit export, and you're going to want to export this case simply as a DXD file. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll export this to our desktop wherever you want to go. Make sure it's a DXD file. And once you have that, we'll go ahead and import it into the inLAB software. When you import it into the inLAB software, it goes right to the administration screen just to make sure that you're very clear in what you're doing. Here we're a crown biogeneric tooth number 8, and we can go directly to the model stage. Now when we go to the model stage, we have this little step called the model axis. Now here's where I think the actual differences are between the two softwares. Where the insertion axis of the chairside software is a bit arbitrary, with the model axis here in the inLAB software, I really have a very good idea of what I'm trying to do every single time. So the thing that I pay the most attention to is actually this upper left hand side picture, specifically the midline of the two central incisors. Okay, so what I really want to do is two things. Let's go ahead and bring this up so you can see the whole thing. What I use this model for is to rotate it left and right. I want to make sure I'm looking straight on these central incisors. So I want to make sure, like if I was looking at a smile directly on, I want to make sure I rotate this so I can see both centrals, or in this case a central and a prep, which is pretty close here. Maybe just like this. Okay. You want to also make sure that on this big horseshoe on the right that it's lined up where this little notch here is pretty much lined up with the midline. I'm not going to get too concerned that I can't see everything here. Obviously I can't see any buccal margins. That doesn't concern me. So I've got this lined up left to right pretty good. The next thing I'll do is I'm going to use this horizontal line to basically make my midline perpendicular to that line. So a lot of times I like to just drag it down to get that incisal edge right on that line. And I can see that the midline is perpendicular, the left to right axis is good. And when I look at this lower picture, you kind of see the profile or the inclination of the teeth is about what we'd like to see. So basically when I align this, I'm just going off the central incisors, getting these three pictures lined up. The one I'm concerned about the least actually is the one here on the right. This is just to get the left-right axis good for this picture. Again, notice I want to point out you can't see any of the margins here, but that doesn't really matter to me too much. So we'll hit OK, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so after I exported it from the chairside software, the margin stayed. The design obviously didn't, but the margin stayed, so I don't need to draw the margin. Now watch a very interesting thing that happens when I hit Define Insertion Access. When I hit Define Insertion Access, it automatically finds this. So that arbitrary movement I was doing in the insertion axis in the chairside software, it automatically finds this. I can see all my margins. It's straight up and down. And so I really don't have to touch this at all. I defined the correct model axis in that step before this. The insertion axis automatically finds it. We're going to hit OK. We'll move forward. Here's our actual parameters, which I made sure were the same exact parameters that we had in chairside, and we'll go ahead and calculate our proposal, and we'll see the difference. Okay, so here's my initial proposal. You can see the difference here. Not only is it not going over into the adjacent teeth here, it's lined up a little bit better. It's not so flat. I've got a nice profile here. I mean, really, you don't have to do much work at all to this proposal. I might just simply take my form tool, or excuse me, my circular shape tool, and start maybe bulking out these line angles just a little bit to give me some room to do some adjustments later on. But you can see the difference in the proposal between the chairside software and the inLAB software. So my feeling is the proposals are much better in the inLAB software is because the software allows us to line up the model axis. It knows exactly where the position of that tooth is. It's not an arbitrary insertion axis like the chairside. One other feature obviously that we do have with the inLAB software is we have our analyzing tools. We can put up our analyzing grid. We can use this grid, we can use this grid to do the same exact thing. Use that bottom line to line up the incisal edges, make it perpendicular, make that midline perpendicular, and then you can actually use these grids to go ahead and line these up. So you can notice that I'm maybe a little bit wide here, so that grid will help you get your proportions. But most importantly, I just wanted you guys to recognize the difference in proposals between the two softwares and have an understanding of what the model axis is and how to manipulate that for better results.